this is literally textbook police coercion.
Oh yeah, we're part of a Satan cult because we're cool.
Thing called the Alfred plea. It's a lot of bad. This is what I like to call a spin jump. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie and today we are back with another dun dun mukbang. Woo! I'm so freaking excited because today, Abyss, for the first time ever on this channel, in my entire life actually, I don't think I have ever even seen, ever touched an entire Alaskan king crab Abyss. I've had king crab legs, I've had Alaskan king crab legs. I have never had the entire thing just like this. It's spiky, it's dangerous, but I love things that are a little bit challenging. Before we get started, you know what else Abyss is excited about? I'm super excited to introduce today's sponsors of the video, Spin Jump. Thank you for making this king crab happen. So essentially what the game is, I'm gonna put a little screen here so you can see me play it, but it's so much fun. It's like my idea of a perfect game because it keeps you busy and it's so entertaining and it's so addicting. The objective of the game, I'm just gonna show you with my body because I feel like that speaks a lot. You're gonna get a ball and you're gonna jump the ball from each level all the way down to the levels to the very bottom. And that's when you play in level mode. So there's two different modes that the game plays. In level mode, it has 150 levels. I personally like playing in that mode because I feel like it gets me a little bit more excited and it's a little bit more addicted. And so then you just jump from your little barriers and you want to get all the way down to the bottom. There are red obstacles that if your ball touches it, you will die. So you have to jump from each level using your finger to swipe like this. They have super cool special effects that you can get. Like you have a 2 times, which will double your score. And then also they have like this rocket launcher where you get that and it'll just shoot you down and barricade through all the freaking levels. And on top of that, they also have a shield which will shield you from accidentally landing on those red blocks, which I hate with a passion. So I like to use the level mode, but let's say you don't want to do that. You can do an endless mode where it's just endless until you die and you could go to the depths of I don't know where you want to be, but it's gonna be amazing. On top of that, they also have this really cool effect where if you fall multiple blocks at a time and just swipe your finger and you don't even bounce on any levels, you get extra points. And Abyss love extra points, extra sauce, please. Please check the link in the description. Download it. It's free, it's addicting, and it's so much fun. And I actually feel like I'm like using my brain power. Thank you, Spin Jump, for sponsoring today's king crab feast with Alfredo sauce. And let's get into it. We heated up a bunch of Alfredo sauce and it's so
You wanna
spiky.
start with these?
No, that's design for now.
That's design, okay.
We gotta have the design.
Okay, so literally just push, crack the leg. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Does this can you eat the body of a king crab or am I crazy?
hold on.
Wait,
hold on.
is there something in the king crab?
Look at this.
Oh my
That
god.
looks so epic.
I feel like when you just buy the legs, they don't come with this middle meat.
It does.
Oh, but it's not as like sticks out.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? Okay, let's dip it in the Alfredo. Get a good Alfredo-y bite.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Wow. Mm-hmm. The meat is so fresh.
So fresh. I'm just playing what you're saying. It's that good, guys.
So good.
Oh my god. You know, when we get king crab everywhere else, I feel like the meat's kind of salty. It's not salty at all.
Yeah.
Am I losing it? Holy cow. Wow, I feel like it's not salty at all. I'm having a fucking blast with this king crab right now. Like, I don't even know how to explain how happy I feel. Like, this is hitting the spot in ways I can't imagine. So we did a 15-pound lobster. I'm actually not sure which one you guys are gonna see first. I don't know. I feel like so far this has a bit of a better taste.
Yeah.
I feel like the meat, well, I guess because it's not oversized.
Yeah.
Whereas the lobster is definitely oversized
Oh,
compared
yeah.
to the regular, right?
That was hard to enjoy.
Yeah, but oh my gosh, this is not hard to enjoy. Let me just suck on this crab meat, you know what I'm saying? Do
What?
what I do best. What?
I think this is regular king crab size, right? It's not like
Yeah.
crazy. Ooh, look at this. Just like any meat you pull off.
It's so good.
That sounded wrong.
What meat, boo? What meat? So, I'm just gonna jump into today's story because we've got a lot of base to cover. Today's story is a doozy. It's a weird one. It's a wild one. It's gonna blow your mind. It blew my mind. It's kind of like, you know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's kind of creepy and sad. Like, it's not just creepy, it's just kind of deeply sad as well. So, This has to do with satanic rituals, cults, a triple murder, and being guilty when you're not guilty. So I didn't know that there was such a thing in the law because it just seems like it goes against everything that the law stands for. But apparently there's this thing called the ALFRED plea.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong.
It's called what?
It's actually the Alfred, but this is Alfredo sauce, so Abyss is getting confused, okay? It's called the ALFRED plea. And essentially the plea is, you know how like when you go to court, people say, hey, do you plead guilty or do you plead like no contest or innocent, right?
Yeah.
So it's like saying, I believe I'm not guilty, even when you go to court. Usually if you say you're guilty, then it's just a matter of how many years you're going to be in jail. Mm-hmm. So there's actually something called the ALFRED plea that they made in law, which is mind-blowing. Why the hell do they need this? And it's the fact that you can say, hey, I truly believe I'm innocent. However, I feel that the judge has enough evidence to say that I'm guilty. So I feel like it's for people who literally were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And for some reason, there's too much evidence that you could be convicted of this crime that you did not commit.
So they're saying basically I'm guilty, but everything out there makes it look like I'm not guilty, but everything makes it look like I am guilty. So there's nothing I can do at this point, so I'm just gonna plead guilty.
But it's like,
That's kind of sad.
I'm pleading guilty but not guilty. Does it make sense? You know? It's so sad. So, this is one of the craziest cases that I've read that had to do with this. Because usually it's pretty straight and narrow. People either plead guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm having too fun. This starts in West Memphis, Arkansas. When I was younger, you know, I used to call Arkansas Arkansas. And that's not because I'm stupid, but there's literally a state called Kansas. So I thought that like it would just be Arkansas.
But that still sounds
And then
stupid.
and then you can spell it with an R and then Kansas. I didn't know there was an AR and then Kansas. I thought it was just a fucking Arkansas. It happened in West Memphis, Arkansas. Ooh. This was May 5th when 3 young boys, they were 8 years old, all 3 of them. Michael, Christopher, and Steve.
Are they friends? Just friends.
So they're all friends. And they decide that they're going to hang out. Their parents agree to it. The parents are like, yeah, totally, hang out, guys. They're actually seen by neighbors hanging out around 6:30 p.m. Which is nothing out of this world for West Memphis, right? So the neighbor sees them hanging out, and all of a sudden, 7 o'clock hits. Christopher's adopted father calls 911 and says, listen here, my son is missing. My son is gone. I cannot find him. I don't know if he was kidnapped, but he is a missing.
What?
And so the police come, they try to do an initial search, but here's the problem. It's just kind of weird. Like literally 30 minutes ago, someone said that they saw the boys just playing around. So maybe they just got lost in the creek. Like maybe they just don't want to come home in time for supper, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, the initial efforts that night weren't really blown out of proportion. Like they weren't big. Like they were just like, okay, we're going to do our best. But even the friends and families of these 3 boys, they decided, okay, we also have to go out and look.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is they looked in the same exact spot because there was a creek near their neighborhood where they would later find the boys the next day.
So they look.
Yeah, so the night of May 5th, they're like, oh my God, they're all gone. All 3 boys are gone. They start freaking out. The police do a little bit of searching, but it wasn't a full-blown search. It was just like, okay, we can try to do our best. Like, sun has already come down. They don't really believe, I think, in my opinion, the police didn't really believe that the boys were missing because it's only a 30-minute gap.
Yeah.
But then the parents, friends and families, they all do a search. Nothing comes to fruition. The next morning, 8 a.m. hits. They have a massively intense search for these 3 boys. Because it's not 1, it's not 2, but it's 3 damn boys. That is not okay. And they're 8 years old. So people are stressed. People think that they're in major danger.
Where did they go in the first place?
They were just hanging out by the creek. But so, like, when I read stuff like this, you know, obviously I've never been to West Memphis, but from what I could find online, tell me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't like this massive creek from like a national park where they could get lost. It's like, you know, a smaller.
Yeah.
Mmm. Should we do the body?
Oh, let me do it.
Okay, thank God. I feel like I always try to be a little bit more barbaric with my eating because it looks cooler, but it's not possible.
Yeah, you can't really eat.
That was pretty barbaric though. Not gonna lie. So the next day, 8 in the morning hits. They all start a searching. They all start looking. I'm talking a human chain. I tried to look up other instances where people searched to this level of intensity, but they created in this small town a human chain search party, which means they go shoulder to shoulder. They don't let any square footage go underneath them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you just have a search party of like 100 people going out and searching, they just kind of split up and start looking, right?
Yeah.
But a human chain is like, you're really trying to get every section of this area done. So 8 o'clock to 1:47, they come up to nothing. No clues, no nothing. 1:47 hits. One of the people, a part of the search party, they're near the creek in the neighborhood, and they spot a little boy's black shoe in the creek. And they say, wait, holy shit, that's a little muddy, but let's go pull that out. So they all rush over, they pull out this shoe, and they realize, oh my God, this is one of the boys' shoes because the parents were there. So they start freaking out. They look a little bit further, and shortly after, they find all 3 boys' bodies in the creek.
Are they drowned?
So here's the scary part. They were all unclothed. They were tied by their own shoelaces. So they were tied up, all 3 of them, but it was with their own tennis shoe shoelaces. And the way that they were tied, I don't really want to describe it too much, but
like their hands are tied and stuff, or their whole body is like tied.
It's called a hog tied, and the reason is it comes from like cooking, but it's when you tie your right wrist to your right ankle. And your left wrist to your left ankle. So you're kind of tied into a shape of a U.
What the hell? Why would somebody do that?
Yeah, and then all of their clothes were found inside out in the creek bank. 2 of the boys' underpants were still yet to be discovered. They're still not found. And it's just the craziest thing, right? And they found the bodies. Everybody starts freaking out. The world goes into a frenzy because it's not, it sucks to say this, but when it's one person, it's really sad. But when it's 3 young boys who are friends, who are hanging out, it's just, there's so many questions.
Yeah, I would worry, like, if I have a kid in that town, I will freaking move out.
Yeah, and then it's also scarier because usually people say you have power in numbers. That's why they're like, they have the buddy system. Like, don't go anywhere without your buddy. Yeah. But then it's like, what happened here? Just spritting some lemon juice. So good.
Wow.
Now they call the coroner. They take the body to be examined because they're a little bit confused. They want to know how these boys died, how they passed, right? Yeah. What were their last moments doing? So 2 of the boys, they were deemed as multiple injuries with drowning. So I don't know if that makes them worse than Christopher. Christopher is one of the boys. It's actually the boy whose adopted father called 911 to report them missing initially, right? Yeah. He was just deemed with multiple injuries. And his case was a little bit different because he actually was... They had cut off his male organ.
Jesus.
So it was a little bit darker, in my opinion, but I don't know if that means all the boys... I mean, obviously they all went through shit, but 2 of them had drowning, which Christopher, it didn't seem like the obvious reason was drowning. So it's confusing. Now, everything about this is confusing because it didn't look like they were sexually assaulted. So it just seemed almost like the police immediately said it seemed like a cult, almost like a satanic ritual because the way that they were tied, the way that they were found, and the things that were done to their bodies are consistent with kind of satanic cult-like behavior, like as a sacrifice to Satan or something.
What?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
They said it seemed like it was Satan. Now, the first suspect, originally, they don't really have any evidence. That's the crazier part, because maybe it has to do with how the creek was laid out. There was no evidence. There was no murder weapon. Nobody left a shoe behind, like a Cinderella shoe. Nobody left shit behind. So everyone in the town was like, who the hell did this? There was no leads. Until somebody, including the police, they decided, you know who seems like they would do this because he's really into cult culture? Like, he seems like he would love to be in a cult. He is the name of Damien. He was 18 years old at the time. He's much, much older now. He was 18 at the time. He was in and out of like mental institutions. Like the psychiatrist said that he had massive mood swings. He has grandiose delusions. Does that make sense? Like, you know how some people kind of romanticize crime and stuff? Like, it's almost like that, I heard.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of got some problems, and he was in and out of school, never went to school. He came from a very unfortunate like background. Not unfortunate, but kind of a poor background. And so he always had social workers coming. They couldn't really have a stable household. But you know what the crazy thing is? His criminal record was only vandalism and shoplifting. So it's not like he had an aggressive criminal past.
Yeah.
But in this town, like the cops knew him. Everybody knew him as being a troublemaker. And knowing him as someone who might be into like a cult.
That's kind of scary that, you know, if this is a small town, I mean, people know everybody, right?
Yeah.
Everybody know everybody. So imagine how freaky it could be. Like, it could be your neighbor.
Yeah, that's so true. Wow, that's a lot of body. Sorry. I like leg meat a little more. It's a lot of bod. Okay, sorry. So they decide, okay, he needs to be our first suspect. Now, the way that they told the police, or the police told the public, instead of saying he's their main suspect, because then the press would ask, and the press were all over this, guys. Like, it wasn't just going to go by lightly. Then the press would ask, okay, well, like, what evidence do you have? Why do you think he's the main suspect, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't really have evidence. So to the press, they said that he was their lead of information, said their main lead, that he knew what happened. Now, nobody knows, even to this day, if Damien knew what happened that day. So they bring him in for questioning. He was the most interrogated person in this case.
What?
Now, the police decide that he's guilty because during their interrogation, what had happened was, so in cases like this, you know when you watch like TV shows of like crimes and like police like talking to press, they are very strategic in the way that they release their information. So when something happens, honestly, when you watch it happen, you think that you know everything. Like, you think you know what they think that the suspect is, but the truth is they know a lot more usually. Or they're trying to have a giant search party. I feel like when someone goes missing, they give you a lot more information. But when they're looking for a murderer, I feel like they don't want to show the world their cards, the police. So they're trying to control the press. So they didn't tell the press exactly what condition these boys were found in. So they're interrogating Damien at the police station when suddenly he brings up the topic, and this interrogation is no joke. This ain't no, oh, let's grab a cup of coffee in the interrogation room. These interrogations were 12 to 19 hours nonstop. Cops were rotating in and out, and he sat there and he had to answer questions. He took a lie detector test, and he said, I had nothing to do with those 3 boys' murder. And the lie detector said that he was lying. But I just don't know if you can believe that.
Do they use that as evidence?
Yeah. So then they were like, okay, so let's ask him some more about this case because he seems shady shades. So then something came up, and they eventually started talking about how those boys' bodies were found. And he spoke about how one of the boys, you know, his male organ was kind of mutilated.
Yeah.
And the police said, okay, you're 1,000% guilty because we have not told the press that yet. So the press didn't know. So they said you have insider information, meaning you were part of this crime or you know who was part of this crime. And it's also illegal not to tell us who's a part of this crime.
Yeah, how did he know?
So that gets complicated, right? So they decide he's going to be arrested.
Yeah.
But before the police arrest them, they start a second ongoing investigation. So they had him going as the main suspect.
Yeah.
Now, in the middle of all of this, they started investigating a young boy, 17 years old, in West Memphis by the name of Jesse. Now, here's the crazy thing about Jesse. Jesse's IQ was 72. which I'm not saying to like, it's important to the story because when your IQ is that low, so in the US, they kind of consider you borderline intellectually disabled.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what he was determined, but it's just kind of saying in the eyes of the law, like you can't really speak for yourself even if you're above 18. But let's just say that's not even the problem.
Yeah.
He's still 17.
Yeah. But why are they investigating him? Is there any reasons for that?
He's always known as like the violent kid in school, always picked fights, troublemaker.
That's such weird reasons to...
He goes to the same school as Damien. They're not close friends, but they're well acquainted, is what they said. So people think it's really weird, right?
Yeah.
He gets questioned without his parents in the room. An underage person with an IQ of 72. I think this is important to the story because all the articles I've read, which I've read a lot, they just keep pointing this part out, right? I think it just goes to show how like not okay that is.
Yeah.
So they start questioning him for, I think, 19 hours straight, which is tiring for anyone, but it's also tiring for a minor who has maybe a disability, right? That's not okay. So they start questioning him, and out of those 19 hours or so, only 46 minutes of it were taped. So the police tapes interrogations, but the 46 minutes that they taped was his confession for the murder of all 3 boys.
That's sketchy as...
So then a little bit after, the timeline is a little bit intense because they had kind of 2 open investigations.
Yeah.
So they had the Damien one going, and then in the middle of that, they started with Jesse, and then they arrested Jesse first. He was the first arrest. The second arrest was Damien. Okay, I'll take the claw, you take these 2. Because this claw looks good.
You need help though, I think.
Oh, I should be fine, no?
Yeah.
So good. Okay, I'm gonna need you guys to hold your tits because it's gonna get a little bit confusing, okay? So they arrest Jesse, then they arrest Damien, and then they arrest a close friend of Damien's by the name, his last name is Baldwin. So they're close friends, they get into it a lot with each other, they do a lot of shitty things together, they shoplift together, they graffiti together, you know, they're just the perfect example of best friends. Like, that's what me and Patricia do on our off days. They seem like they wouldn't have done this without each other. So they arrest those 3 boys in the connection to those other 3 boys' murder, a triple murder. By these 3 boys. They said it was organized. It was planned. It took more than one person. So then at the same time that this is happening, a little bit prior to this, there is a woman by the name of Vicky. Now, Vicky is absolutely new to West Memphis. She's new. She just moved in with her only son, her young son, around the age of those 3 boys who went missing and was eventually murdered, right?
Yeah.
His name is Aaron. Now, Vicky was in the police station the day of their murder because she was getting a lie detector test because her new employer, accused her of stealing money.
Okay.
And so she was like, I didn't steal no money. And then they're like, okay, well, there's only one way to prove it. So she was in there. Yeah, so this is like a big game show of Maury or some shit. It's weird. So they decide to bring her into the police station. They're trying to administer a lie detector test, but because she brought her young son, Aaron, for whatever reason, the police department were like, Aaron is too big of a distraction. Your young 8-year-old son is doing too much that you could use it as an excuse. He's jumping off the walls. You refuse to let us, like, take him. And if we administer a test and it comes out, like, in all the wrong results that you don't want, you could be like, it's because my son was, like, distracting me, you know?
Yeah.
I was worried for his safety. Of course my heartbeat goes up.
Yeah.
So they said there's no point in even trying to taint the evidence. So instead of that, the police are just talking to Aaron, the 8-year-old boy. Because you know how kids talk. Kids be talking.
And since when police can talk to 8-year-old kids?
Well, I think the mom was in the room.
Are they trying to collect evidence?
No,
or
I
just
think
chatting?
they're chatting.
Oh.
You know, like, you know, if you see an 8-year-old and they're waiting and that's your place of work, you might just strike a conversation. Just to be like, okay, little boy, right?
Yeah.
And maybe this happened like this was, okay, all I know for sure on the timeline, if you guys can clarify, that'd be awesome, because different articles said different things. But I know for a fact that this was before the boys' bodies were found. So maybe it was after they went missing, like during that short time span, but before they were found, because Aaron told the police where he thought they would be found. And it was inside of the creek near what he called the playhouse. Now, there is no actual infrastructure near where their bodies were found. There is no thing that looks like a treehouse or a playhouse. But you know, kids' imaginations, it could literally just be like a little rock that they call the playhouse.
Yeah. Wait, that boy knew
where the bodies would be.
That is creepy.
Yeah. And he said that he saw those 3 boys disappear with Satanists. So this confirmed the police's theory in their minds that it was like a Satan-worshipping cult. And he said they spoke Spanish and they took the 3 boys to the playhouse. And so police obviously immediately after they arrested the 3 older boys for the murder, they did a police lineup. Aaron could not identify the 3 of them.
Oh, the little boy?
But then, because he couldn't identify them, you can't use that as evidence of this boy said it, but maybe these guys weren't it.
Yeah.
So then Vicky said she tried to do this thing where she wore a hidden wire and became friends with 2 of those boys when the police were suspecting them before the arrest. But nothing came of the wire. Like, you couldn't hear anything. Like, she was going undercover, trying to, like, find a way to get them to incriminate themselves and confess to the murder. Because Jesse had confessed. The other 2 boys, they're like, this, we innocent.
Yeah.
So she's trying to get them to brag about it or something. Because you know how kids be. They brag about shit that's illegal.
Yeah.
So then that didn't end up happening because the wire got mumbled. There's a conspiracy about that, which I'll get into. So that didn't end up happening. So then she just came to court and she told everybody, including the police, that, oh, I went to this, it's called a Wiccan, I think, or a Wiccan. And it's essentially a pagan witchcraft convention. Not a convention, but a gathering.
What?
A pagan, I don't know, it's a type of witchcraft, I think. So it's like kind of has to do with like satanicness, right? And she said that she went to a gathering and Damien was there and he was bragging about how he murdered those 3 boys. Now the crazy part is there's no proof that this gathering ever took place. They didn't confirm it with other people at the gathering. She didn't even give names of who else was there. She also didn't even give a location of where this happened. So there's like, it's literally just, it might as well be a freaking dream.
Yeah.
But the police used it as evidence. The police were like, yup, see, there you go. He murdered her. Or the 3 boys, right? He
Like
murdered all of them.
Police of all these stories?
Yeah. I wonder if you, okay, leave it in the comments. I wonder if you're a police officer and you mess up a case so bad and you accidentally put someone in jail.
Do they get in trouble?
Do you lose your job or no?
I think it really depends, huh? Depends on the case. Or depends on how many people
Believed it too?
or like how public it is. You know, like those cases made it to the fucking news.
Yeah. Well, this one made it to the news. So she said all of that. Because of what's called the Bruton rule, these 3 boys had to go to court for the murder to see if that the jury would say that they're guilty or not guilty. They had to be tried in 2 different cases. I know people are going to say, why wasn't it 3? Usually if it's a group of people, they get charged at once. But the reason that it's not 1 and it's 2, it's because Jesse had already confessed to the murder. So when you confess to the murder, you're already a different case from the people who haven't confessed. Because your confession cannot say, oh, well, then that means all of these people confessed. So it's kind of fair for the people on stand, I guess. So the 2 boys, Damien and his friend Baldwin, they went to court in one case, and Jesse went first. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 40 years. I don't know what that means, but that plus 40 probably meant something, right? So he was sentenced to life, Jesse, immediately because they have his confession. For them, it was kind of like a shut and done case. But when you look back at this, like there are a lot of people who studied this, right? Studied education. they studied it, and there's an FBI agent who is now a criminal like profiler, and he said that this is literally textbook police coercion, saying like the police made him confess. We don't know if he's guilty or not, but that confession is suspect AF is what he's saying.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a real confession.
But still, in the eyes of the court, he was sentenced to life plus 40 years. Now the other two kids were getting tried 3 days after. So obviously, if the first person gets convicted, it's going to be so much easier for you to get convicted. Not that they're going to bring Jesse into it, but there's just no way people are going to be like, oh, you know, it's definitely not going to be easier for you to go free. So court proceeds. All of this comes up. The defense is saying, listen, you really don't have much evidence. Like, this is crazy because where's the DNA? Where are the facts? Other than the fact that these kids have bad histories and allegedly they said some shit. Allegedly, right? By this lady who is literally was in the police station for allegedly stealing from her employer. I don't know, maybe not the most credible person, right?
Yeah.
And Aaron couldn't even identify these three guys. Maybe he isn't lying. Maybe Aaron did see his friends get killed by Satanists, but he couldn't say that these were the Satanists. Yeah. So what is going on? And so the defense is I'm getting heated. Why am I getting heated? So the defense is like, what is going on? They go to court. The prosecutor starts asking these two boys about their violent history. Yeah. Apparently they got people to testify saying like, you know, shit went down. They're violent people. Yeah. And the defense tried to be like, that has nothing to do with this case. Yeah. Like, it has nothing to do with these three boys. They don't even know these three boys. Yeah. But they still got convicted and sent to life in prison. So all three boys, 18, 17, and I think Baldwin is 18 as well, sentenced to the rest of their lives in prison for the triple murder of these three young boys. Now, obviously, because there wasn't much evidence other than a shitty police confession with a person who was a minor and shouldn't have been alone with the police anyway. And also just kind of hidden facts. Now, I know what you're going to say, but Stephanie, he knew how they were murdered. Damien knew that he had, you know, injuries on his male parts, right? Yeah. But the truth is, the police are getting slammed for this case because of the way that they handled it with the press. So if police decides not to leak information, you do not freaking leak information. But like a lot of people were saying, yeah, maybe it wasn't printed on TV or these like newspapers, but the police were pretty mouthy. Like everybody in town kind of knew what was happening.
Yeah, gossip.
So it was like, yes, there's no way to prove that I knew that because I watched it on TV because it wasn't aired on TV. Yeah. But there's also no way to prove that like I didn't hear it from someone walking around town. Yeah, exactly. Because maybe the police told their wives and wives told their, you know, brunch friends and shit like that. And on top of that, the way that they handled this case was so shitty. When they got to the creek and they found those three bodies, first of all, when you find bodies like that, you don't think like, okay, let's move their bodies.
I'll crack it for you.
Yeah, thank you. You know that they died and you know that someone was behind it. It wasn't self-doing, right? Yeah. But they moved their bodies out the lake, kind of just let them lay on the creek bed for a long time, being susceptible to sunlight, to insects. First of all, you moved their bodies, right? Yeah. It took them 2 hours. The police took 2 hours to call the coroners. Usually the coroners are immediately called. You don't touch the bodies until they look at it. Yeah. Exactly where they are. Unless it's like in a burning car where you have to take it out so they can examine it. Exactly. So it's just like, why did you do that? On top of that, when something is found in a creek and it's not like the damn Pacific Ocean that's so massive, that creek becomes drained. You drain it so any little piece of evidence at the bottom or inside the water is evidence.
That's crazy.
Especially for the triple murder of 3 young kids, absolutely, right? Even if it's just one adult that you think wasn't suicide and you think it has even a percentage of homicide, usually the police will do that. Obviously, if it's the ocean, you can't do that. But if it's a creek, you could do that.
You can just block the flow and...
Yeah, and then drain it. Yeah. But then all they did was just throw some sandbags around the area so that the water couldn't seep out of the area that the boys' bodies were found. So I don't know if that's as big of a case, right, as like what the heck police, but some people thought it was a big deal. And on top of that, this whole thing from start to finish. Yeah. The police convicted these 3 young men, saying that the murder took place at the creek. But no blood, absolutely none, dried, old, new, fresh, was found at the creek.
No what?
blood. And these boys, like, they should have bled if the murder took place at the creek. So it's just, it almost makes you question, okay, why don't we try to find where they were murdered? Then it might lead you to who murdered them.
Yeah, exactly.
But instead, they're like, they were murdered at the creek. But all the signs are telling you no. So people are having a riot. Everybody's like, this seems unfair. At this point, obviously, everybody wants justice for the 3 boys. But at the same time, is it these 3 boys? We don't know, right?
Exactly.
So they start freaking out. The 3 boys, they start appealing to the Supreme Court of Arkansas.
Oh.
Gets denied. Their conviction gets affirmed by the Supreme Court. Now, after it gets denied, some weird evidence comes to light. Christopher's adopted father, allegedly, he like worked on a TV show called Paradise Lost on HBO or something. It gets a little bit confusing. I don't know like exactly what happened there, right? But all I do know is he had this knife. And it's kind of like a family heirloom knife type looking thing. And they used it for the show. Now, I know HBO got involved because HBO told them that they have to submit it to the West Memphis police in connection to these 3 boys because they found blood on it. And it was being borrowed by Christopher's father.
What?
From Christopher's father. It's Christopher's father's. He owns it.
Yeah.
And so the police bring him in for questioning because why is there blood on this knife? Maybe it's Chris's blood because they tested it and him and his son Christopher, they have the same blood type. So is it your blood or is it Christopher's blood?
Yeah.
So then he says, man, I don't know whose blood that is, right? And the police say, oh, it's fine, sir. You probably just accidentally left it out one day. And he goes, you're right, police. I did accidentally leave it out one day.
How did they know this?
I don't know. It was all over the articles. Yeah. So then they were like, okay. And he walked away. Now, I don't think he had anything to do with it, but it just goes to show that the police didn't really have all the facts on this case. Second thing that happened is Vicky, the mother of young Aaron, who said that he saw the Satanist and the one that also kind of pinpointed where the bodies would later be found, which to me is kind of creepy.
That was really sketchy, though.
Yeah. She came out and she said, everything I said was a goddamn lie.
What?
Everything I said, saying, oh, we went to this little Wiccan festival and he told me he was bragging about the boys' murders. Lie. Everything is lie after lie because the police said that they would take my kid away from me.
What the fuck?
Because, you know, the police can say you're an unfit mother.
She's crazy.
And maybe she had a record. So then if you go to court and the judge sees your record and it's like the police said this, then they're probably going to take your kid away from you.
Yeah.
So then she was like, so I had to lie. And so then everyone's getting more and more upset because these 3 young men are still sitting in jail. So they go, okay, we need to appeal this. 2007 rolls around where DNA evidence is like popping. They're opening old cases, testing this crazy DNA evidence.
Yeah.
They start testing all of it. And it seems like it's not solid proof that someone else was there. One of the dad's hairs was found in the shoelaces that were tied.
Wow.
But we don't know what that has anything to do with anything. Maybe he just ties the dog. Kid shoes. So that it's not a lead. But there was also no evidence that those 3 young men were there.
Right.
Because back then, this was like in 1994, they couldn't test that, they couldn't prove that. So it was all kind of like, oh, lie detector, you know, blah, blah, blah. But then now it's like, okay, test the evidence. They test the evidence. They don't know if it's because it's so old that there's no evidence, but there's just no trace of these 3 boys being there at the creek.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, DNA evidence shows that we were not at the crime scene, allegedly. So they do an appeal, a massive Supreme Court appeal. And the judge decides. And this is where I keep wanting to call it Alfredo. The Alfred law comes in play because they're saying, listen, for this, the 2 boys, Damien and Baldwin, for the past 18 and a half years that they were in jail, they said that they never did it.
Yeah.
Usually they confess after they're in jail.
Yeah.
Because what are they going to do?
Yeah.
So they said, we never did it. And so then they tweak the Alfred plea, which means, hey, we're innocent, but there was so much weird evidence that tied us to the spot. So
no evidence.
Yeah, but I mean, like the whole knowing, like, you know, all these small things, lie detector.
Right.
So then they take that plea and the court decided to grant them time served. So time served is something that can happen in court, is where you go to court, you appeal, and a lot of the times what mostly happens is they'll say, okay, why don't you just do maybe 3 more years, right? Finish up your 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Or they say you're absolutely innocent, go away, right?
Yeah.
But time served is saying on your record, it'll still say that you know, were convicted of the murder. You're not innocent of this crime, but your time has been served. So you can go tomorrow. So that means you served 18 years for this crime.
Yeah.
But you still have it on your record. So usually people, it's, okay, serve more time, but not as much as we originally gave you, or we'll take it off your record and we're so sorry.
Yeah.
But then the problem is, if they sign this, they also sign that they will never sue Arkansas for unjustifiably putting them in jail and wasting 18 years of their lives. So they can't even sue the state. Usually when people are innocently like put in jail, they'll come back and sue the state for millions because you ruined my life.
That's so freaking like.
But they signed
so
that.
Rigged and
yeah. So then all 3 boys were let out. But again, it's like, I think they're all doing well. Like, none of them are like getting into trouble or anything. But they're doing as well as they can.
Life is freaking ruined.
Yeah,
okay?
but like their life is ruined. They're not gonna get a job. What are they gonna do? You just spent like your prime years, not your prime years because young is nice, but like that's where you grow. You meet your significant other. You find a good job. You buy a house. Like your prime years, right?
Right.
In jail.
So the internet believes they're innocent.
Yes, but here's the crazy thing. You have to remember, like, lack of evidence doesn't mean innocence either. Right. So what people are saying is this is either the worst thing Arkansas... I know, it's a leather chair. So people are saying this is either the worst thing Arkansas has done to these 3 young men and ruined their lives, or did these 3 young men get away with murder?
See?
So it's always in the back of your mind. But I believe if there's no evidence, there's no evidence. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, honestly, then you could be back of the mind thinking everybody's guilty because there's no evidence. Exactly. But some people are saying maybe.
So there's no... You say there's a conspiracy about the dad or something?
Oh, no. The mom, Vicky. When she said that she lied because they were trying to take the kid. About the little pagan witch craft.
So basically police rigged this whole thing. They feed the words to these people just so they can close the case. Because think about it. 3 young boys murdered. You don't find the murders. So till this day, there's no clue of who the evidence about the murder.
Oh, and you know what's crazier? People have been asking the governor of Arkansas, I don't know if it's like that city or Arkansas itself, but they're asking politicians that are in that, like, that reign over that area to take away that charge so that they don't have that on their record. They can live their lives. They've served their time unjustly, people think, right? And the person said, no, unless you can prove to me someone else committed the murders, these people will have this on their record.
That's so crazy.
So it's like, yeah, they're out of jail, but then they're not really out of jail, you know. And then, like, obviously a lot of people started getting involved. There was an FBI agent / profiler who also gave his thoughts. He wasn't involved in the actual case, but he gave his thoughts, and he was saying this is the work of someone who has been practicing, like one person who wants to punish these 3 young boys for whatever twisted reason in his mind. It's not the work of 3 unsophisticated, no offense, not the most educated teens who are like, oh yeah, we're part of a Satan cult because we're cool, let's do this, you know. Like it would be a lot messier. There would be so much evidence. It would just be a shit show. But this is the work of someone who is patient, who is, you know, very just
no evidence. Clean.
So they were like, how is this the work of 3 young teen boys who can't even get away with vandalism? You put graffiti on a wall and you get caught and it's on your record, but suddenly you get away with a triple murder? What? Right? So people were like, yeah, this is so stupid. But I mean, that is the story of the West Memphis 3. That's their nickname. The West Memphis 3 are the 3 older boys who allegedly were convicted. Well, they were convicted, but allegedly murdered the 3 young boys from West Memphis. We're just going to go sit on that. Leave your thoughts of what you think happened, or if you think that's fair, if you think there's a bigger conspiracy of why the police did this. Obviously, it's pressure to close the case and find the murderers, but if you guys have any other thoughts, and if I was missing any information, leave it in the comments below. I try to do my best, but sometimes there is just a lot of information on a lot of different platforms, and I do a lot of research, but, you know, a bit imperfect or whatever. And if you guys haven't already, download Spin Jump, linked in the description, and if you guys want to see more whole king crab videos, let me know because I love doing it. It was so juicy and so delicious, and we freaking killed it. So I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.